Hello, James. How are you today?
I'm great. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for this film. Okay, so
Oh,
I'll be straight out with you. Love Charles Grodin. I've always been a Charles Grodin fan. My dad, God rest his soul, like adored this guy. They would have been the same age. They born in the same year. When was the first time you discovered Charles Grodin?
when I saw The Heartbreak Kid, I mean, I had seen Rosemary's Baby, but it didn't register. That's Charles Grodin or whatever.
For
But when I
sure.
saw The Heartbreak Kid, I fell in love with that movie. And years later, I ended up being a writer producer on Sybil's show, Sybil Shepherd's show.
Love that
Uh,
show. That was a great show.
so we went all the way full circle. And then I saw him in Broadway on Broadway with Ellen Burstyn the same time next year,
Yeah.
which is one of the greatest nights I've ever had in the theater to this day. And I just had always been a fan. My mother gave me his first book. I remember reading that and loving that. And then when I read about him saving all these wrongly convicted people from prison, I said, I've got to make this film because that's what my films tend to be. Like my last film was on Carl Laemmle, the man who founded Universal Studios,
Yes.
yet also saved 300 Jewish refugee families from Nazi Germany. I like to have films about someone that they were extremely accomplished in their field, but they also had this almost supermenschy quality
Okay.
of and so you
Yeah.
have a whole other story. I mean, the truth is, you could have just made a film on Carl Laemmle and Universal or Charles Grodin and his acting and talk show career without any of the other stuff, but it adds so much more poignancy and
Yes.
depth when you have this other aspect. And in Grodin's case, you really do see from his childhood on, he was always interested in social justice. In high
Yeah.
school, in with Simon and Garfunkel, when they did the special, on and on and on, you
Yeah.
saw that this guy, and he wanted to be a journalism major and got
Mhm.
laid into acting, and then spent the last 20 years of his life basically working for these people, giving voice to people who were voiceless in prison.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Quite
that's
amazing. And as you
remarkable.
said, that was the first word that came into my mind, mensch. There's nobody menchier than
Yeah.
Charles Grodin. Like we saw as the public watching him, being fans of his, watching his movies, whatever. He's funny, he's a good guy, you get that. But he kept all that other stuff so quiet.
Yeah.
It's like tikkun olam, like just pay it
That's
forward,
it. That's it. Exactly. It's tikkun olam. It's save one life, you save the world, help one person. And I hope people ask me what you want people to walk away from the film. Well, I want them to be entertained
Yeah,
and I want them to laugh a lot.
sure.
I was a former comedy writer, so I get to use all of Grodin's great stuff. And and also just to see what one person can do
Yeah,
because
yeah,
he's a real hero, Charles Grodin. He's not a superhero. He's a real human hero. And this work had a real cost on his life, but it didn't matter. And he didn't want to be known for his movies. He wanted to be known for his social justice work,
yeah.
and as he should.
100%. Yeah. Okay. So you're working with a guy where there's no shortage of footage. You get amazing interviews. I mean, I can't imagine that you approach anybody and they went, "No, I don't want to talk about him." I mean, everybody talked about it, and just only good things to say. And I loved. I mean, to get De Niro in such a relaxed, that's not easy, my friend.
No,
I've
it's not.
interviewed him
No, it's
many
not.
times. I got to tell you, always wonderful interview, but he can be edgy.
He's a lovely
So
man, but he's shy and he's quiet.
absolutely, that's what it is. He's very shy. He doesn't like to do these interviews and stuff, and I get that. But when he's talking, they were so good in that movie together. It was just,
Yeah.
so just I'm jumping ahead because I have so much I want to ask you. But where do you even start when you have all this amazing footage plus all these interviews? Like, how do you even get going?
So I had 100 hours of material, and it's like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
What you do is what I do. I don't know what other people do. I have little folders and I'll say, okay, this is the Simon and Garfunkel special. So you just start putting things in there, and then Paul Simon was kind enough to donate the film, so I had something to work with.
Nice.
And yeah, so you start doing that, and you just throw anything you like, you just put into the folder, anything, and then you do a transcript of all of that, and then you start to look at, or I start to look at story's kind of my strength, and I have to compete with other documentaries who have 10 or 20 times the budget I have. So I do it with story because
Yeah.
I know what touches me, and I have a pretty good feel for the beginning, middle, and end of any story, even a small story, whatever that is. So you get a feel, whether it's a prologue, then the story, then the epilogue to whatever that might be. You get a real feeling for why is this part important to tell in your story? What's the theme of your story? And the theme in Grodin's life certainly was his social justice work all through his life,
Hmm.
regardless of his acting. So you just start to, if you can just keep touching on that every 15 minutes in the film, 20 minutes in the film, so the audience doesn't lose track of that and they're not blindsided by the last 15, 20 minutes of the film being, about this social justice work and this, how did he get these women out of prison? And I almost looked at that as like a political thriller. Like, what are the obstacles in his way?
Sure.
How does he do this? How did he do this? How did he use his celebrity? As he said, you don't want me picketing outside the governor's office. You want me inside the governor's office.
Yeah.
And and he was visiting his women in prison every weekend. Think about
Yeah.
that. Every week.
And then took care of them afterwards too. Like
Yes,
it didn't
yes.
just stop. It didn't, okay, you're out, see ya. Like, no, he just continued it on with helping them with their lives.
A couple
Amazing.
of the women I'm going to Washington in a couple of days for their festival, and a couple of the women are going to be there at the screening. So it's going to be really heartwarming to see
Oh,
them.
100%. Oh, it's just a beautiful story. And then, I'm thinking, and you're watching, going through all this footage of his life and his movies, and then what the celebrities, his friends have had to say about him. So what, aside from the social justice stuff, what ultimately surprised you most about Charles Grodin when you started to kind of dig through into his life?
I think just how deeply his father's death and the fact that they were sort of at odds when he died, how much that affected him. And I think Charles Grodin was a workaholic. He was
Yeah.
always writing. His wife told me he'd go to dinner parties, and after like an hour and a half, he'd just get up and like if they were in a restaurant, he'd just go outside. If he was at a person's home, he'd go in another room and he'd just start writing, or he'd just start, he was, and I think that came from the whole backstory with his father that he didn't want to work in a store.
Right.
He wanted to play ball like most kids would want to. And I think how deeply that affected him. And you can see later in the film him talking about it. And I don't think he ever got over it.
Yeah.
I think he sort of came to terms with it, but I think that really colored his perception of what he had to do in life to make up for that, which wasn't really even his fault. That was just a kid. Your kid has no control over when their father is ill, and
Sure, of course.
but you feel those guilt feelings. And I think that spurred him on to do all this work. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. His life mirrored my dad's life. Like, honestly, like the more you're talking, my dad
Really?
went through the exact same thing, and they were born in the same year. Father died
Wow.
young, same thing. And then I always remember sitting there with my dad, like when I went into this business, he was so, "Are you ever going to interview Charles Grodin? Are you ever, it's
Oh,
like it was just,
really?
yeah, because Midnight Run, like my dad was an accountant, so he just would watch that movie. I don't know, 5,000 times.
It's
He was
great. I just
obsessed.
showed
Yeah,
my boys, they're in their early 20s, mid 20s. I just showed them that about 6 months ago, and they loved it.
yeah.
They just loved it.
It's a classic, but heartbreak hits
Oh,
you, like you're right. Almost pretty much everything he did, he just he just touched, like, it was a joy to watch him, and
And
I
he
want to know
raised the
from you.
level of things he was in. If he was on Carson or Letterman, my friends and I always made it appointment viewing. Oh,
For
Grodin
sure.
on Thursday, let's watch. And if he was in Heaven Can Wait or he was in Real Life or whatever film he was in, he always brought the level up of the film because he was so smart and he didn't really try and what's the word I'm looking for? He didn't overact. He
Right.
underacted,
Yes.
and
Yeah, it
that
was so
brought you
subtle.
to
Yeah.
it brought you to him.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just, yeah. Yeah. Seriously. Miss
Some
him so much.
actors say, they throw the Jerry Lewises of the world or whatever. It's like, look at me, and that's great too. But he
Sure.
made you come to him.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Out of all the celebrities, or that you got to speak with, I mean, I would think Ellen Burstyn must have been a joy because of the fact that you saw them on Broadway. But Elaine May, like, wow,
That was the toughest. It took me a year. I've become
wow, I
friends
like
with
your
her. My
tenacity.
wife and I see her when we go to New York. We're going in July. She was wonderful, but
Yeah.
she does not do this. She wouldn't even do an interview for her own film on Mike Nichols that her producer asked her to do an interview. She said, I don't do this. And
So how did you get her?
I had finished doing my interviews, and then Julian Schlossberg was in the film and is
Yep.
very close with Elaine, wonderful guy.
Yeah.
And he said, I was speaking to Elaine the other day, and she regretted not having done that because she was the main. I mean, she really, with the Heartbreak Kid, put
Yes.
him into, made him a star in a way. Not in a way, made him a star.
Yeah.
And uh, she regretted it. And Julian said, well, let me ask Jim if he'll do another interview because I was editing by that point. I said, what are you nuts? Of course I'll do another interview. It's Elaine May, who's like a genius. I love Elaine May.
Good for you.
Uh, that's one of the other treats of doing this film, by the way. Like many people have been forgotten by time. It happens to
Yeah.
almost everybody, no matter how big you are.
Yeah.
People today, they don't know Nichols and May.
You're right.
They barely know Alan Arkin. They barely know, Ellen Burstyn. There's a couple of big films that maybe someone's in, but so it's unless you're the Beatles or maybe Taylor Swift, and we won't know about that for another 50 years, right?
Right.
No matter how great you are, and these are people I just revered. I
Yeah.
loved all these people and their talent and Simon and Garfunkel. And to be able to put them in the film, and even if it's a 10-second clip of Nichols and May, maybe someone will go on YouTube and watch that or watch their films. And to keep their work alive, even a little bit more than it would have been, is a real privilege for me and an honor because I like Grodin. I just think these were the top people in their field.
I couldn't agree more. So God bless you for bringing us this
It
film,
was it
honestly.
was a happy accident, It was just a
Yeah,
happy.
it really was a wonderful documentary.
Thank
I
you.
just loved every minute of it. And best of luck at all the festivals. I know it's going to be here in Toronto too. So best of luck with everything. And thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. You were
Oh,
delightful. Thank you.
oh, thank you. Take care. Have a nice day.
Okay. Bye
Okay,
bye.
bye-bye.